All right, here we are. Welcome, everybody. Welcome in body. Sorry, Graham. So we've been given the task of opening this up.
We're going to dance first.
Poorly. Actually, I'll speak for myself. So we're doing this introduction, so we want to talk a little bit about Grail country, talk about the people who are within Grail country. So this is Nate's thing. This is his baby, you know. And we thank him very much. So there are corners within the corner, as PVK likes to say. Grail country is one of them. It's probably the place in the corner where I feel most home. The people that are within it, the main contributors are probably Sherry. Michael was a founding member who wasn't able to be here today. Jess does a lot of stuff in there. Jed. Who else is in Grail country?
Luke
Johnston's in there.
Jeremy Firth.
Yes. Sorry, Jeremy.
Jeremy's joined me recently.
Almond Tree comes in sometimes.
Yeah, Almond Tree.
Jason Schweizer.
Yeah.
I love you.
And I mean, all kinds of people from the online community in the live streams, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, how would we characterize it? It's the weird, it's the weird part of the weird, the very esoteric part of the corner. People like to talk about meditations on the tarot and things like that. Cover your ears if that hurts your conservatism. So sorry, Christian Reformed Church. If I'm not approved of anything. No one would ever give me a pulpit. But yet I'm up here. But that's because this is Grail country. So I'm very excited to be here. We're going to have, I guess I'm introducing and talking about a couple people that are going to be up here this morning. Paul, who basically needs no introduction here. Our biggest celebrity, probably here, I would say. Our shining light, our North Star. But yeah, go on. But we do love you. You're great. And look for. So he's going to be the first in our hearts and speaker. And then we're also going to have Karen. Karen? I haven't even gotten to where you at. I haven't even gotten to talk to you or hug you or be with you yet. But so we're going to get to listen to you. Meaning code. A central core part of the larger TLC for many years now.
Yeah. How long, Karen? 6 years?
Paul told me in 2019, start a channel, so I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. It's like one of the core pillars, I think, of the TLC. So I'm excited to hear your talk. And
Karen gave me my start, too. I started doing stuff on Karen's channel before I started looking at it.
Radical orthodoxy.
Yeah.
There we go.
there you go. Check them out. Like and subscribe. To everything and all of it. And then you're introducing, say other things.
I have to hold paper.
Yeah.
I have to hold paper in your hand. Okay, so I'm going to introduce my friend Graham Pardon. I got to know Graham's work through Substack, and somehow we connected. I reached out to Graham, waited for a really long time, and then Graham reached out to me, and we ended up having conversations with each other, and I've really benefited greatly from his work, his thought. He pushes a lot of buttons, but in a very loving and kind way, and he provokes me to thought, and he's an amazing poet. So, so I'm introducing Graham, and I just wanted to say, welcome to Grail country. Children of God. Thank you.
I want to give a special welcome. I'm looking around to see if I can see him. There he is. Stand up, Mark.
Give Mark van Heidsma. Mark is the pastor of this church. I met Mark. Does this go up, Mark? You're shorter than I am. Yeah. I met Mark my freshman year at Calvin College, and we met in history. He was also a history major, and so Mark and I took history classes together, and then I went to seminary and he went to seminary, and I was actually going to go to Fuller Seminary with him, but I met the woman that would become my wife, and so I love you, Mark, but I loved her more. He only did a year at Fuller, and then he came back, and so we did Calvin Seminary together, and we studied for our oral comps together. See, you're definitely not the music pastor here, are you? And so when Nate said he was going to do a conference, he was going to do it here, I thought, oh my goodness, Mark's been here. Mark's been here a year longer than I've been at Living Stones. And so yesterday I had lunch with Mark, and so it was absolutely great to be here. How much time do I have? Because I'll go on all morning, you know that. When do I stop? I have 15 minutes. Oh gosh. All right. So I got to be fast. I have so many stories to tell. It is so good to see all of you here. I love this. I love how Nate has put together this conference. I better start my talk or I'm not going to get through it. One of the first things I heard Jordan Peterson say that caught my ear was when he talked about how Freud and Jung knew that we had information in our heads that we didn't consciously know about. And so again, if you study psychology, you know, yes, unconscious, yeah, all this stuff. But the idea that there was information, because in my conscious self, I imagine that I am master of my own brain and I know all my own things, and what I don't know, and what I do know, I do know. But then, you know, then you do some reading, and I read this book about Jung and Freud and how they're all into this dream analysis, and that's just like kind of weird. And then after hearing Peterson say that, it's like, oh yeah, because when you're looking at your dreams, you're sort of talking or examining a part of you that is below the consciousness waterline, and you can't see it. Fast forward to last January, we started every week estuary at Living Stones at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. For years I had done estuary in the evening, and Ray and Raj are from our estuary, so I'm not celebrities to these guys, which is great. But I could never get my church people to come to the evening ones. And the Sunday school class, the numbers were just so low, but I loved it so much, I never wanted to give it up. And then finally it was like, okay, I have to do something else. And so I said, let's do estuary on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock and services at 11. I'm starting to think now I might flip those hours. I have to wait for the church to die a little bit more before I can do that probably. But so we started doing estuary every week. And so we had some of the people, Ray is there every week, Raj should be there, but he has this other religious thing he does on Sunday morning. You can guess what that is. And we started doing it every week. And what was so cool was that the repetition cycle, and I suspected this having been a pastor, because churches have all these different cycles, and one of them is every week, that the group would grow deeper together in their community and their knowledge of each other. And one of the women, is this recorded or not? It is? Oh, okay. I got to know that because of what I say. I got to be a little more careful. She'll never see it, because she'll never go on the internet. And Ray knows exactly who I'm going there. We had this woman that showed up in the church years ago named Joanne, and she came in because I was doing Sunday school on the book of Revelation. I spent 75 weeks on the book of Revelation, and she loved it. And she grew up in Mississippi before the Civil Rights Movement in the Jim Crow South. She was like the youngest in the family of 11 in a tiny little 2-bedroom house. Her father and mother, their marriage stayed intact. And already in the Sunday school classes, she would say things that I knew this woman has wisdom. I don't know that she has a college degree. I know her two sons, and they're wonderful men. But this woman has wisdom, and her wisdom seeps through in stories from a community that our culture would say, that community has been oppressed and marginalized, and they have been the victims of us all. But when she would tell her stories, the wisdom in that community would just emerge. She used to tell me stories about her mother. She'd see something going on, and she'd say, "Mama, what's going on over there?" Or something, someone got beat up, or someone was getting robbed or taken, and her mother would always look at her and say, "God knows." And that lived with her whole life. Since Estuary, we've been hearing stories about her father. And they've been so interesting. And many of the topics that come at our Estuary, when I was talking to Mark about this, Mark says, when I look at your channel, you're talking about all this stuff that's like way up here. I say, yeah, don't let that fool you. There's a bunch of nerds here that like to, talk way up here. But once you get them into an estuary place and they start to lower their guard down, then you start to hear about all the stuff that pastors know. And so many of the topics, some TLC stuff comes in, but most of the topics in our every week estuary are relationship topics. And one of the things that the more we talked about, the more we listened to Joanne and the stuff, she almost always passes in the second round, but she'll come in later and then she'll open up because she's a little shy, but out the stories come, is that we realize that in an impoverished, marginalized, Jim Crow segregated, poor community in rural Mississippi, they had knowledge that they didn't know they had. And the knowledge was all the sorts of knowledge that addresses the questions that people come to estuary with. How do you raise a child? How do you care for an old person? What do you do with a person who is causing these kinds of issues in your community? How do you have a community? Now, if you were to ask any of these people those questions, they would look at you like, I don't know. But they did know. And they do know, and that knowledge sits underneath the waterline, and it's information. And then when I was talking to, one of my favorite Randos conversations in the last year was with, the speaker here, Chris Green, and Nate is like, "Oh, you got to talk to Chris. You'll really get along with Chris." And it's like, well, I like his stuff. I've watched some of his stuff online. But then we got talking, and we connected. And then he talked about the fact that in this country, we elevate people who can take complex situations and distill them down into a little listicle of these are the important things. And we reduce everything to those things. And the ones we value that do that, we usually call experts. And what struck me was that in that little town in Mississippi, you know what they didn't have any of? Experts. And when I look at so many of the people that we are now talking to online in the meaning crisis to poly crisis to meta crisis, and we have all of these experts and we have all the thinky-talky online, and we're all looking for, here's all of the mess that we have, and this is the cause. Or, if we're really sophisticated, 3 factors. And that what Chris said to me was just like, wow, that is so true. And while it is the case that social sciences have their place and their validity and what they can offer us, there's so much information, even in a struggling, oppressed, marginalized community, and some of it full of wisdom and contextualized that experts will never see because, well, usually they're not paying attention because they're out experting somewhere talking behind microphones, that we pass them by. Now, a story that remained I don't know if it's a psyop. Where's Grizz? There he is. I don't know if it's a psyop by Israeli intelligence, but I heard the story that part of the ways that the Israelis were able to frustrate the Iranians trying to develop the bomb was they developed a computer virus that actually transmitted via the speakers of the computers at a frequency we can't hear, that was picked up by the microphones of other computers, and that's how they got in to the Iranian computers. They didn't have to be hooked up to the internet or anything, but there was just this other level that complete human beings were not aware of at all, but it was getting in and reprogramming and resetting. Now, Chad last night was freaking out, and he was freaking out with something that I'm beginning to notice as an expert, having gone to a number of these conferences, that the first time you all get together after you've been live streaming in 2 dimensions with each other and not quite recognizing, is that really Jeremy? I'm not quite sure. He doesn't look exactly like he looks like on all the live streams, is that when we meet each other face to face, for the first time after we've been watching each other over Zoom, it's like something feels weird. They're not exactly who they are. And Chad assured me this morning, I feel much better today, so probably had a chance to sleep on it, and you're all now 3-dimensional in his salience landscape, and now we can get on to business. But one of the things that I think estuary is for is exactly this, that part of the reason that I'm so passionate about churches having an estuary adjacent to them, it might be in the building, it might even be on the church website that they have this, but one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is because I think about that sneaky, maybe it's manufactured, maybe itself is a psyop, Israeli idea of passing viruses underneath the waterline at a frequency we're not paying attention because we're looking at these expert listicles and being distracted by them, but to actually pass information, wisdom, beneath the waterline to each other to subtly and slowly shape one another. And we do it. Gosh, when I went into that room, I thought, oh, this is so church. Here's the Psalter hymnals. Here's a little room. We're starting with this. I felt like a VBS teacher all over again. It's Vacation Bible School. Sorry for the churchies. That's even churchies. But what are we doing here is we are doing this collective cognition, and that's above the waterline. But what we're really doing here is the mapping and the formation. And what we're actually developing here is that just like that little Mississippi community, there is information in this room that we don't know about. And we're transmitting it to each other. And things are coming onto our maps on the inside, and we're forming and shaping each other. And yeah, that's what we're doing. And what I'm so interested in, I was just telling Ray, I told my group, I said, yeah, we've only got an hour, so I'm going to adjust the protocol. And then I immediately thought of Ray, because I thought, yeah, Ray's going to get in with his group, and he's going to say, Ray is the protocol Nazi, if you haven't met Ray yet. Because Ray's like, we have a protocol, we're going to do it. I don't care if we have an hour. I don't care if you're really curious about whoever is here. Only 8 minutes for round 1. Sorry. You have coffee if you really want to know something about each other. So Ray was actually able to go through all 4 loops right away. Me and Raj, we were like, let's spend the first half hour talking about ourselves. Okay, let's introduce ourselves. But what we are doing is we are really doing this mapping. And it is happening. So if you don't want to be mapped on, you should leave now, because I think over the next 2 days, there's going to be a lot of mapping and a lot of formation and a lot of changing. And I hope that is going to bring in all of us some of this wisdom and some of this shalom that I know many of us are seeking. So how am I doing on time? What? I'm done. Luke says I'm done. I landed the plane.
So also, if you're wondering about how tall I am in real life compared to Paul, so I forgot to mention too, we're going to do some actual embodiment where you will understand these unconscious frequencies more, and you'll understand relevance realization with Rafe this morning. He's also going to do some talking, I think, tomorrow. So decide which you like more, the movement or the talking.
The movement is mandatory.
Yeah, you have to. And now I think we're doing a morning break. So I don't know how much are we sticking to the schedule exactly? Because, okay, be back by 10:20. Nate?
Oh, just wanted to mention something in the context of the morning break. There is a jar and some slips of paper and pens out there. If you have questions for any of our speakers that you brought with you, that you're thinking about, that you would like, you can write them on there, drop them in the jar, and then when we have our panel discussions, you guys can go through and select and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, so do that. Also, this is from my friend Jens from Minneapolis, who I love. Rafe, he would really like to do rough and tumble play with you. Just throwing it out there. So. See you at 10:20.